Hey, good morning, Erica. How are you?
Okay, thank you all for being here. Are we live? We're live. Okay, so this is, my name is Perry. If we haven't met, thank you. What I know is you could be anywhere in the world right now and you chose to be here with us, whether you're online or in person. And I take that very seriously. So we're super grateful you're here. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you, buddy. Welcome. So we're going to spend the next hour learning from Donovan. And I'm really excited about this conversation. We first hung out at Mega Relief. Hurricane Irma and Harvey hit in Houston in 2017. They canceled Mega Camp, and instead we went down and did a bunch of hurricane relief stuff, and that's where we first hung out. Yeah. And what I immediately liked about you was you're very relatable, you're fun to be around, and I felt like just your presence gave us kind of a calming effect. Thank you. Which was cool. And we had never hung out, prior to that, nor have we since, really.
Yeah.
So
it brings us together, even locally.
Yeah. So this is cool. So so thank you all for being here. If you haven't been to one of these, very informal, you're going to have a ton of questions. Ask as many as you'd like, and let's get started. So so if you would, and I know you brought a bunch of stuff, so this will be fun, but let's just start. How'd you get into real estate? What's your journey to Keller Williams? Where you're from, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So I don't want to bore anyone, so I'll keep this brief. I was born and raised in a real estate family, so having that around the house was pretty common. Never in my entire life did I ever, a singular thought never went into my brain until I was maybe in my early 20s that I may actually get into the industry as well. I'm one of six, so my father was a broker out in Buffalo, and he was a single earner. My mom cleaned homes for a living to kind of cash work and kind of paid for our school supplies for the six kids and our groceries, and my dad pretty much kind of handled the rest. We lived on a horse farm, so we had a 40-acre horse farm, anywhere from usually 40 to 70 horses. And so that's really where I learned my work ethic and discipline was then, and wouldn't trade it, because I think a lot of who I am today came from like those early years of having to be responsible out on the farm and doing my chores, and it was important to juggle that along with school and sports and everything there. But got licensed in 05. Prior to that, I graduated from St. John's in 2002. Worked with my brother from age 12 to 24 doing construction, residential drywaller. So we hung drywall. And so I had a little bit of real estate kind of like base, but my dad didn't teach us about it. It just existed. I knew that's what he did. I will never forget like the grumpy days he came back, that now in hindsight, having done this 18 years, I know he probably had a deal blowing up on him or something like that. And so we knew to stay away from him. But yeah, I did the traditional grind from 2005 to I'd say about 2019. And a lot of what I'm going to touch on today is going to be a little bit like contrarian. It's going to be against like kind of the general flow of KW. And so I've pivoted to a little bit of a nonlinear path. And part of my kind of end point is just to talk to people about like empowering them to know that, hey, the traditional game is fine. It provided my base, but I want to like empower people to like consider the alternatives within our industry where you can actually kind of just pivot, do a slight pivot, and still be able to earn a different way. And so we'll touch on that as this dialogue goes on. But yeah, so I went from as big as having a team of 9. I started up in Maple Grove. I moved from a different company to Maple Grove in 2012. Was there for several years. Moved down to Eden Prairie in 2017, and I kind of did everything KW told you to do. Hire your first assistant, and then grow, and go through the 7 levels. And we did that for a while until we didn't, and then here we are. So I went from having 9 people on the team, hated it, hated life. It was busy, it was chaotic, and we felt we weren't really great. I was great at what I did, but not great at I was good at inspiring people, but I wanted to grind, and I expected other people to go grind and do their thing. And when I realized that they weren't, or they couldn't, or they were inept, or whatever the reason was, it just weighed me down, and it was kind of like keeping the bull in the cage. And I wanted to be out in the ring, like, hitting the red carpet, But so then in 2019, I realized there was a void in the market. I had a lot of experience in residential new construction. I had developed some land for some farmers of mine, or split off a lot where they had more than one building entitlement. So I'd gone through the planning and zoning process for them. And so I'm like, let's just buy a piece, and I've got a long list, like 15 people long, that want like acreage in the West Metro. Like, let's just go create the lots, because they didn't exist. And then that changed my life. 2019.
Two questions. Where are you in the order of 6, and how did that impact you? And then secondly, what brokerage were you at, if you can share, and why did you end up joining KW?
Yeah. I'm second to the bottom of 6, so we've got a 14-year age span. I always say I'm a middle child, because we kind of were 3 and 3 with a 7-year gap in the middle. Mom has lost a baby pretty late term, which would have been sibling 7 or sibling 6 of mine, but our 7th. And so it's kind of, we raised 3 and 3, which was cool. So I call myself a middle. Then my journey into real estate is I'm closest to my brother, Doug, who's 9 years older than me. Always have been. He really was my second father since he moved back from Arizona in 2012. I worked with him doing construction. Not in 2012, I was 12. So he just kind of put me under his wing and taught me numbers and math and kind of this entrepreneurial business brain. And that really made me entrepreneurial, because I don't think naturally I was. But doing that was a huge impact on my life. And he still look up to him like a father. So huge role model for me. But I started at a little company called Financial Freedom Realty in Uptown, because I had a friend that went there, and they were doing all the condo conversions like in early 2000s.
David Epstein?
No, so that was Clark Gasson was running that.
Okay.
And then it was so Clark Gasson, and then Bill Frothinger was the broker there. And so little boutique shop right in the heart of Uptown, very urban feel. It was like kind of boiler room meets, Lagoon and Lake Street.
What, so you got licensed in 05?
05, yeah.
What month?
March.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then there was kind of some rumors in the air that there's some unethicals going on between the broker and the agents on payouts of commissions and stuff. I'm like, I really don't want to be a part of that. I moved over to a company called Exit Realty. It's in this market. They're huge on a lot of coasts and in Canada. It's a Canadian-based company. Had a really simple concept of their kind of how they profit share, how they do their money piece. Was there for a time, and under the tutelage of Frank D'Angelo, who's still a broker there. Phenomenal guy, great trainer, educator. But then I wanted to not be the biggest guy in the room, and I aspired to kind of chase and be bigger, and I needed bigger people to chase. So I said, hey, let's go to Maple Grove. So Maple Grove was a big growing office, the likes of the David Foy Group and Linda Schultz and Carrie Schmitz and all those guys. And that was really good company there. So I loved those days I was there from 2012 to 2017.
Nice. So just to give you a perspective, so currently in the Eden Prairie office, you are the #1 earner in the office year to date. You're 49,000 in gross commissions ahead of anyone else. Just FYI, if you didn't know that. And then rolling 12 months from right now, you're the #1 agent in that office as well, as far as volume in the rolling 12 months. So that's cool. And you live in Excelsior, is that right?
I live in Excelsior. Yep. Married up for sure. Super smart gal. She runs the finance side of our business and the operations side of our business. So I've got 3 kids, 4th on the way. Oldest is Brecken, he's 7. I've got a 5-year-old girl and a soon to be 3-year-old girl. And that really spurred a ton of my change. So to kind of go about where my story isn't very fascinating or unique, kind of from 2012 to 2019, because I was kind of doing what everyone else reads in the books and what you're taught at the offices, grow a team and leverage and do all these things. Where it gets interesting is from 2019 to now. And that's where some of the papers I gave you, if you looked at
let's dive in.
If you look at the white page, from 2019 to present at the bottom, if you're looking at the total earnings from just my investments alone, it's just shy of $4 million. That's where all of a sudden earning and lifestyle kind of collide. And then all of a sudden you can really truly
Do
start.
you need more copies?
No, we've got plenty.
Okay, good. Cool.
Can I have one?
Everyone have one,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's get Perry a couple. So that's where things kind of really changed for me. I was just getting really burnt out on like all the traditional grind, and we'd had so many kind of agents kind of come in, come out, underperform. We were spending a ton of money on realtor.com leads, on assistants, on office space, mojo dialers, like all the things. And it still was that kind of the rainmaker was still pulling from my own net profit. So like I wasn't seeing return out of these agents yet. And so we just got tired of like beating our head against the wall and just said, you know what, let's just go small for big profit. So in 2019, actually 2018, Q4 of 2018, we made that decision. And we just said, you know, let's start maybe doing what we teach everyone else. Let's invest a little bit more. And David Keller would say, like, if you aren't investing and you're in this business, like, what are you doing? And so part of like my kind of mantra today is like, even if you aren't comfortable at the end of this, like considering doing your own real estate investments, because that's what we're going to kind of get to talking about, like you should be considering pivoting your business. If you're struggling at all right now and getting the traditional commitments of buy-sell contracts with people, you might consider pivoting your attention to a hugely underserved market, and that is the investor market in the Twin Cities Metro. Just go on biggerpockets.com and you'll see how it is very underrepresented. Investors are seeking investments of all kinds, flip properties, land development, commercial, industrial, warehouse, apartment. People are looking to buy multifamily, small apartment complexes, big apartment complexes. So if you're out there and you're thinking like, gosh, you know, I'm getting burned out, or I'm just feeling like I don't want to do another door knock. I don't want to chase the next deal, this perpetual chasing the next deal. Imagine if the next deal you're chasing is for like one client that gives you like 5 to 10 deals a year. Or imagine if, like me, I became my singular best client. So I don't write, there's nobody I write more contracts for, purchase agreements, listing contracts for, than my business entities. And that, where like this pivoting to self-reliance on the white page says like, okay, imagine if instead of you kind of working for or being a slave to a client or getting their commitment, you're actually working that hard or more for your own deals. And like, instead of answering to them or why weren't there showings, or when are you doing your next open house, or we're out of flyers, or you're just, it's your own, you're answering to yourself and the things that you have to do within your investment business. And that's what really monopolizes my time. We still take, and we'll probably serve, I'm having a horrendous year in the traditional buy-sell business this year. I mean, I'm the first to tell you, like, there's nothing special about me at all. I get really lucky sometimes with timing and how things happen. And I will not fail. I will find a way in any market. I will find a way. I'll find a way. And there's a way right now. And if you don't think you're in it, you need to just consider pivoting.
Questions?
Well, I have a lot of questions, but the first one just being like, do you have your background? Is it at all in like construction or any of that? Because I'm looking at like your flips. I mean, I'm just thinking as like a layperson, you know, how would someone who does not have any construction handyman experience, how could they drive a profit doing sort of investments?
So for representing investors or yourself? Yeah, so great question. So most people before they, you know, I presume everyone did something else in another career field before they did this, correct? And that career field you were in prior, you probably maybe didn't have an articulate, like, you know, graduate level understanding of that job field before you got into it, yet you had to start somewhere, right? So either the company was self-teaching you in some way through training or whatever to get to wherever these echelons of growth and development required you to be able to either stay in that role or go to a more graduated role. It's all out there. So yes, my background is in residential new construction, but I mean, I was just hanging drywall in homes. So I wasn't like I was framing the houses or pouring the foundation or putting the roofs on. I was working in that kind of category. And then in terms of like the real estate upbringing, I mean, my dad, when I asked to I went and told my dad I sat him down a coffee at Red's Cafe in Waverly, or in Montrose in 2005. I said, hey, I'm thinking about getting licensed. This OG, I call it an OG. He's an old schooler, dinosaur, cotton top, small little brokerage, small little business. he's like, well, that's great. I think you'd be great at it, but go learn it somewhere else. Because I'm not the guy you want to learn from. I'm just an old dinosaur. And so you go learn it. You want to come back someday to us, do it. And then I never looked, after I got into the training and education, I never looked back. But it all can be self-taught. This day and age, in an era where everything's on YouTube, you can learn more than the average common layperson in 1 week of devoted commitment to either listening to podcasts. I recommend Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets was like the one thing that really changed my world. Not huge into reading. I'm just not. I just don't have the patience for it. I love listening, and I can put a pod in my ear and I could be driving around or like working and still listening to a podcast. So once you kind of figure out your niche category, whether it's a flipping a house, like how would I have the understanding from A to Z of all the risks and things like that? Well, the first thing I want to say is like, it's just a house, right? I mean, it's a concrete foundation. It's got wood framing in it. It's got some HVAC running through it, some electrical. It's got some lights. It's got some doors. It's got some finishes, right? It's not like you're cracking open a brain and you're trying to figure out like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do this brain surgery here. It's not. It's a simple deal.
Mhm.
So once you self-educate or educate through somebody else, whether you're picking up the books or doing podcasts or learning on YouTube, whatever, you'll realize that, okay, just remind yourself it's not that complicated, and believe that it's happening all around you, even if you don't see it. So there are a ton of people, agents just like me, that are at small little firms, no-name firms, or even at big firms, and you don't see them or hear from them, but they're out there quietly, privately, only acting as investors for themselves. And go look in the roster. Like, but they're not pumping out volumes of units, but they're just doing what they have to do to make what they have to make to support their household, right? And so, so I'm just saying it absolutely can be done. I mean, you can just be self-taught. Yeah, I have a raging high IQ when it comes to new construction. At certain asset classes in real estate, especially like house flipping, house remodeling, land development, I have self-taught myself a ton to have I can just look at a deal, run the numbers in my head and know if there's enough room for fat to make it. I always categorize things as a green light deal, yellow light deal, red light deal. If it's like in yellow or green and it's borderline, I just know how to analyze it just right from even looking at it online. I know in a certain district, like, okay, if I can buy something at 500, I can put $150 in them at 650, and I want to make 100. I know I need to be, high around 8 to be able to like kind of net that after selling costs. And I just know what markets and know how to use the MLS and multiple browsers to be able to like make sure that my ARV after repair value is going to support this house as is, plus improvements equals the resale value C, which is ARV after repair value. But that's my focus. So like I'm not as hyper skilled as like door knocking or like I say on the one page over here on the white page, like Donavon I don't have an active CRM. I don't do drips. I don't mail to my sphere of influence. I don't host annual parties. I don't have a geographical farm. I don't call cancel expires. I don't host open houses. I don't have a traditional real estate team, although I have a non-traditional one. I don't spend thousands annually on leads. I don't door knock. I don't have rich parents or family members. I don't do traditional lead generation, and I don't necessarily work every day.
I think I don't have that sheet.
I think I have a few other.
Well, yeah, if you don't see it here,
We have 3 sheets.
I can get it for you. Maybe I gave the wrong one for him to print, but
That's
we can get
awesome.
that.
Did you hear that? What he doesn't have?
He's a renegade.
I love that.
I'm the exception, not the rule. But the point is like nothing is being done at like an extraordinary like level. It's just and I'm talking about our traditional business is of course competent. If someone comes to us and says they want to list their house, can you do evaluation? Can you tell us how that process would work? What should we fix? What shouldn't we fix? How long? All those things. I mean, 18 years in and doing that for the majority of the time, the first 14 years. Yeah, we can do that at a high level. It's just we don't push to go get more of that business because it would take away from my focus of what we're trying to do here in the land development world. I can create more in like a single land development, rural residential land development. It's my niche. It's in the West Metro. I can make more money working half the time and make like a 3x to 5x factor of earnings doing that than I can going through the grind of like working with traditional myself.
That answer your question?
Yeah, I have another one.
Okay, go ahead then, Julie.
so, that was kind of in terms of talking about if you were to become an investor, what about how you are, you're not like outreaching to people and stuff. So how do you get investor clients?
Yeah. So I have like a half a dozen investor clients that are active. So I call them like active and ready, right? That are like right now, if they're bottom of deal, they're actively looking. And then a whole bunch of like passively active, but put them in yellow light mode, right? Where they're not actively prompting you. You don't have like a current communication that's ongoing, or there aren't expectations set, but you're actively looking for them. Several dozen of those, but the ones that would actually sign a contract today, if you brought them something that met a certain like performance standard, 6 of those, and those have just a stat came over 18 years of like my personal social network, and then that network has worked into a business network. Because I told Perry, really, when I started in this business in 2005, I'm like, where am I going to get like the most success quickest? So like 98% of all my business was all buyer business. So if you're new or you're listing and you're a new agent, like that's the quickest way to have little expense. If you're just a grinder and you're available, and you can obviously make yourself available for all the retail stuff that's on the MLS, but then also be really kind of innovative in how you're finding off-market opportunities. You can create a really strong value proposition to buyers. When I was single, like in my at that time, 2005 to 2010, before I met my wife, like I would date girls and I would tell them like, hey, I can all of a sudden at the drop of the hat, if someone said they want to see something tonight at 7 and we got plans, like, sorry, you don't like it, check you later, and call me or don't call me. I don't care. My priority is to like serve these people. And so I did that. In my first year, I think I sold 6 million and made $150,000. My best month was 44 grand. And I was sitting in an uptown condo, 2-bed, 2-bath, like literally my boxers and a t-shirt with a little Bluetooth in. Back then, they actually had those then. And I was just like looking around going to myself, going, this is fine that I'm doing this. 44,000 in 1 month right now. Like I was doing construction 12 months ago, swinging a hammer, getting dusty and dirty, and being the construction guy walking into, Boston Market to get my lunch like a dirty slob, making 85,000 and having to grind. And I'm like, 44 grand in 1 month, come on. And so that just kind of like just made me go, I'm never looking back at construction again. I eventually weaned my involvement in my brother's business. I graduated college. It took us from being just drywallers into, I created the logos at home. I hand drew them. I sent them to a graphic designer to create them. We expanded into hanging, taping, spraying. I helped us get contracts with new builders, and we got really big and started to do more services. And then I kind of let him take that, and then I just left to do the residential new construction. Or to do the real estate piece. What else?
The lots.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how you figured out which properties to buy and divide them into lots.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing for anyone that has any aspirations to like even buy a Minnetonka oversized lot and split it into 2, that's always like a great example I tell people is like, start simple. Like one of the things in this industry is we get so many, the distractions are like this wide. They're like 360 degrees of distractions at all times. So if you really hunker down and just focus on the things that matter, and the things that like are going to serve your objective, all the rest of it can just be sidelined or timeout. I would unsubscribe to stuff you don't like, an email that's a chaos to you. If people are soliciting, you just tell them to stop it. Focus on just the stuff that's going to impact your goal. And for me, I just learned how to recognize where the voids were in a market. So I knew I had 5 people in Minnetonka district that I want to build new, but they've got their own builder. Well, I know I can't go to a traditional development because someone else typically probably has a closed build. I can't go to a Gagne development or a Stonegate, or I can't do a Zender development or wherever it is. So I had to try to figure that out. Well, you can go right into the tax feature or realist and do a search for oversized lots. And so once you know what each city standards are for like minimum street frontage and minimum acreage, so square feet, so an acre is 43,560. Most cities require, at least half of that, or 30,000 square feet to be a qualified lot. Then you could start like saying, okay, well, what if I could flip over some rocks or hire someone to do the molding for me and bring forward prospects of like suitable lots that I could door knock, call, write a letter, figure out like, hey, I know you're not for sale right now, but if the price was ever right and it was a no-brainer, would you ever consider like selling your property to me? And then go down that path. And then because I have an entrepreneurial brain, I could either have my client buy it and they're funding that whole process, or I could be buying the lot and then selling the lot to them. And basically, if I'm splitting a lot, I'm demoing the current house, I'm selling it as is, I'm updating it, reselling it, or I'm gonna just, so I'm either gonna retail it out as is, I'm gonna do a remodel that can be heavy or light, or I'm gonna demo it and do 2 builds side by side. And I already have one sold over here with the client that like spurned the need for me to find this property. So it just kind of takes just a slight little regearing of the brain and like what you're looking for. I mean, most of my stuff I all buy in these sheets is all retail. So like, I mean, they're on the MLS. So I'm just seeing something someone else doesn't see. And because I know what certain zoning code, and I didn't know the zoning codes before. I mean, I only knew them until I knew them, right? And so then you create a spreadsheet about certain towns like that have, okay, it's this much minimum square footage, it's this much street frontage. It needs to be in a certain zoning class. So if you're going to go into the comprehensive land use plan for any city, they have like a color coding map on a grid that shows, you know, if it's like tan, these can be subdivided. If it's not, these can be, if they're only, you know, they can't be subdivided. So it's just self-teaching along the way. And then eventually you just become armed with enough knowledge to be able to be successful for that client.
But like even sometimes I've had cases where I thought that I could subdivide it and then learned that I couldn't. So just from easements, I mean, that's why I'm wondering, like, how are there?
It's the first most important thing you have to figure out is how to like identify.
Yeah.
And then once you've identified, then who am I calling to kind of like to ask the question. So the first important call is to the city planning and zoning administrator, talk to them, have the PID or the address ready and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking on this. Is this possible per current code? Do you have any notes on this that would inhibit, is there other utility easements or drainage easements I don't know about that would inhibit me from being able to successfully split this into 2 lots?
Yeah.
And so that's no cost. It's just picking up the phone. So identify and then know who to call. Yes. Go ahead.
Sorry. Do you specifically, and sorry if I missed this, but have you or are you still, I know like a few years back, it was a big thing for investors to target properties that, you know, may have previously been R1, right? And now they're R2, R3, R4. Are you targeting those and then adding on, or are you specifically focusing on lots that you can split and build new, or you do mix?
So like my niche is rural residential. So like we buy 100 acres a year and split it into 10 buildable lots a year. And then depending on the property, we're either retailing those lots back out to the public market where a buyer could buy the lot now, build later, or they could use any builder, or we're keeping those internal where we're retaining the lots and they can only be built with our own builder. So then I'm kind of squeezing the turnip of all the dollars that can come out of that investment. And so I'm acting as my own investor to kind of seek out those properties, secure them. I get them hooked subject to subdividing, which can take 4 to 7 months. So I go to all the planning and zoning meetings. I go do all the PR with like city administrators, I build the team, do all that stuff. And then I get the bids. If we have to put a paved road in or something like that, you know, I'm going to getting the bids and all that stuff. But in terms of like R1, R2, all that classification, it sounds like it's more probably St. Paul or Minneapolis type of stuff. Like when I met my wife, I was living in Uptown. When I got licensed, I was living in Uptown. And that was a great place to live as a single dude, run around, starting in real estate. And I learned a ton. But then over time, life changes and phases of your life change. And now I don't like to get much further east than like 169. I mean, I'm like, I'm gonna stay. My niche is more west, so like kind of 494. So like I get these wholesalers send me stuff in like St. Paul all the time, and I keep the wholesaler like feeds live just because if Tom on my team or somebody in our office like has somebody active over there, I can like share it with them. But like I get nauseous and like want to vomit and swallow it when I used to live there. So I'm with kids and where I'm at, and I'm just like everyone else can kind of have that business. You're not going to find me competing with you on it. As our past clients or people say, hey, I've got a listing in Uptown or have one in Highland Park or wherever it is, like, hey, give me 2 hours and I'll be an expert on what your property is worth in a millisecond, no different than an appraiser would. And we can serve you pretty high in terms of a traditional listing. But I'm not doing it.
So it's not your main focus. You never did like have an interest in focusing on that.
Oh, I did that for 14 years.
Until 2019, you said.
Yeah, till 2018. I mean, I was a foot soldier. I mean, where are you at? Oh, I'm on I'm up in like Pequot Lakes. Like, oh yeah, we're in Pequot Lakes all the time. Great. Yeah. So when's a good time for us to meet? Is that Monday better at noon or Thursday at 3? And boom, we'll be there. I mean, my very first deal was up in, I'm forgetting the lake. It's over up by Alexandria, my very first client. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I would go wherever. I mean, any deal was a good deal no matter where it was. Now, when you've got family obligations at home and your whole life dynamic works, I just will not do it.
It
So
doesn't fit into your schedule here.
yeah, like I don't, like it has to fit into my schedule, and if it doesn't fit into my schedule, I respectfully won't, I just don't do it. I mean, I will not do it. Tom on our team handles most of our traditional stuff. So we whittle it down to where Tom is kind of my dyad partner on our team. And then my wife does operations in our office. There's a ton of office support stuff with contract flows and all that. But if they're not cool with Tom or they're not fine with that, then we're completely fine just not doing it, or we can refer them to somebody else. Does not work.
2 things. First of all, your weekly schedule, which I love that you shared that with us.
Sure.
This is awesome. And I commend you in your dedication to your family. I just want to share that.
Well, thank you.
Because I think that's a battle that I'm a second generation realtor as well.
Yeah.
I remember the days Dad came home grumpy.
Mhm.
Although my dad really wasn't grumpy very often. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time. I'm not as regimented as you are, but I made some decisions a while ago. Today is my son's actually 22nd birthday, and he's like a grown up now, which is weird. But I think if any of you want to see a schedule that is very regimented, this is a great template. I just like super commend you on that.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question that you may not want to answer, and that's okay if you don't. How far west are you buying right now for land?
Yeah. So I always tell people we kind of are like kind of rectangular, non-linear rectangular target is kind of south of Rogers, north of the lakes area, and then north, and then really as far west is kind of like Buffalo. So it's pretty. Buffalo's 35 miles west of the Twin Cities. So we've kind of learned which cities are easiest to deal with planning and zoning, which ones are most receptive to the type of like rural acreage, large developments we're doing. And so, yeah, we're hyper focused on like, there's a district or 2 like that I would buy 100% of if you brought me 10 things right now, I could go find the money in capital partners and purchase it tomorrow. So like those areas for me are like Orono district, acreage in Orono district is gold. And then next best would be like Wayzata rural acreage is gold.
Did you share who your builder is?
Yeah, our builders is JPC Custom Homes out of Buffalo. It's a family business. It's
That
mom.
Phil?
That's Phil, yeah.
So Phil's out of our Otsego office.
Yeah.
I believe, right?
And
And-
Phil,
And doesn't, Robin, or no, what,
Rosie.
Rosie works there.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Hey.
I'm saying the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
yeah,
Rosie.
yeah. Rosie joined them not that long ago. Phenomenal if you guys know her at all. And yeah, so the son is I've talked to him probably 3 times a day. Phil, yeah. And so the mom and dad kind of ran accounting and like day-to-day on site with the vendors. And then Phil does like the upfront pricing, he's the client-facing person. But yeah, he and I both have very similar aspirations and understandings of things. Yeah, there's really 4 decision makers in our equation, and several are I call them the gas, and then several are the brake. And so, like, my wife is a brake girl, but she's learning to be able to just cover the brake and not push it. And me, I'm more like the gas and smart about my brakes, and I kind of wear all 3, but I'm the driving spearhead on like flipping over opportunities, analyzing them. And then Phil is more brakes for sure to like yellow. So he's more of like a red light guy, yellow light guy. He's financially very conservative, as is his family. He was brought up that way. And then his wife is pretty darn conservative too. So it's good in the equation to have like a bunch of brakes and like really only one that's a gas guy. And it just works. Like it just works. The partnership piece, not only are you like hedging the risk and the financial investment, but you're kind of multitasking who does what task to bring a project to development through the whole planning and zoning P&Z planning and zoning process. And it's just been a great partnership. I mean, all things relative today, we've been doing this together since 2019. The first deal we did together on page on the white page, the second one. So the Rolling Hills Road was done with them as a partner. I've done a couple without them, but every single opportunity we at least kind of vet together. And then if they want to not do it because they think it's too risky, then that's fine. Then I'll evaluate whether I do it myself.
So, I got a ton of questions, and we got 20 minutes left.
Okay.
This flying by. It's good. So someone in the audience is sitting here today saying, I would love to diversify and do something with my real estate career other than the traditional buying and selling like
Yeah.
you did. So, the question becomes is, where do you begin? But even more so than that is, Donovan, I'm sitting here and that sounds good and this would be awesome. And I don't need this crazy portfolio like this, but I just want to start with one, but I'm not sure I have the money. Like, do I got to save first?
Yeah.
What are your banking relationships? Like, where do I begin?
Great question. I think that's I'm glad if we're going to squeeze anything in the rest of the time, that's an excellent one. I would say that you don't have to start by like swallowing like an elephant or hitting a grand slam like in minute one. Like if most of you look at your business and say, if I made $100,000 gross a year, how do I want to do it? Right? You can do the traditional buy sell. You could be a commercial broker. You could be an agent with a license that does investment. And with that, you have to start with one, right? So you can't say you did your first one until you did your first one. So, and then eventually your first one's your first and you're in your second, your third, next thing you know, it's 5 years later and you've done 5, right? And so I think the biggest thing is kind of identifying which of like the pathways to either becoming a real estate investor yourself or representing and advocating for investors that you can start to learn where to go to find them. So I would say if you do nothing today, go join Bigger Pockets, create a profile, create a free account in there. And that's where a ton of your ideas all live. So it's just this huge library of podcasts from every category. So from raising capital for apartments to flippers, to people doing VRBOs, to storage facilities, the full spectrum is all there. And they interview people that have gone from nothing to something doing it. So that's a good education base. And so to me, if like I'm using 100,000 as like the example, because it seems like when we do a lot of business planning or 401s, that seems to be a magical number a lot of people kind of get set on, right? Especially early in your career. It's like, well, you could go do 12 transactions of buy sell right now. We know the hunting's hard and the cheese is small and the rates aren't helping us. And this environment is making it, the skill-based agents kind of rise to the top, and you have to do 200 to 300% of what you normally would do in a non-market like this to get the same return. And it's exhausting. Let's face it. We all have families. We have other things we want to do. We have passion. We have hobbies. What I'm inspiring to do is say, even in this market right now, you could achieve $100,000 by simply doing one singular flip. And that flip can either be with your own money, or I could teach you how to like raise capital with whether it's friends or it's family or other clientele, to give them like a no-brainer win-win deal to like put up some money and be a silent partner. You fund the deal using a commercial banks like Bridgewater Bank, Star Bank, Platinum Bank. There's several banks in our Twin Cities market that are prominent in the real estate investing field. And they look at these types of deals. You bring them a simple pro forma that says, hey, here's the subject property. Here's what I'm thinking of doing. And here's the expected return. I burned in a bunch of risk based on the current financial environment. And here's how I think it's going to perform. And one of the examples I have in here in this, if you don't have it, is that example. I kind of break over, go through it. So it'll be something for you guys to read. Anyone online that wants a copy, just
We can get the PDF out.
Yep, you get a copy of it. But I would say like a simple purchase improve is like the easiest way for you to get there. You're like, well, I have like 0 to no IQ about like what to morph this into. Like, I don't know, I've got an idea. Go watch, HGTV for a week as if you haven't already. I mean, you already do have, give yourself some credit. You have way more knowledge than like the common non-licensed person does. And you have way more access to resources than the common person does. So give yourself more credit. But I can look at a deal right away and say, I'm going to buy something for 500. I know that the ARV is, $799, and you've just got to reverse engineer the math back to try to get there. And it's really in the grand scheme. Once you figure out, like, it doesn't need to be your money, but it could be your money. You could borrow in part from your 401k. Most people don't know that most 401k policies allow you to borrow up to like a cap per year. Now you take that money out of play in the market, whether it's in mutuals or stocks or whatever it's in. So, you know, you're going to pull that out and sideline it for a while. You get to charge yourself your own interest. So for us, we simply just go online and we borrow against our 401k all the time. It's 50K cap per person per year. So we can take 100 in a blink and I've got a check or a wire in 2-3 business days. And so we leverage our 401ks a lot if we're in a place where our capital's lean, and go that way. So I think once you just learn kind of and get over the fear of like, but I don't have the money or I don't this or that, like you kind of need to get over that a little bit, because the other thing, if you're in the traditional business, is like, oh, but I don't have the clients, but I don't have the listings. Okay. But you're willing to go just through the gauntlet and crawl through the barbed wire right now to go do that. Or maybe you're not willing to do that. So if you're not willing to do that, you might not be willing to do this. But I promise you, this one will you'll work less hours. Yes, you're going to take out some risks, but you're doing what Gary says you should be doing anyways. You should be investing. You know, I was wearing the buy dirt shirt for Gary. You ever said that at family reunion? Like I was doing it. And so it was just kind of validating when he said that one year. And he talked about, watch out for these guys that are out there doing this thing. And I remember Matt Hunter and Billy like were texting me, hey, Gary's sharing your secrets. I'm like, there's no secret. There's plenty of work for everyone. But even in this market with no supply, you could go find, whether it's a townhome, it'd be a really safe one. Buy a townhome at sub 250, go do a touch up on it at 30,000. So you're updating handles, hardware, pull, light fixtures, maybe carpet, maybe paint. You're just sprucing it up a little bit, but not going over the top like full general contractor going crazy. Maybe you could use a or a handyman to do it. And you may net at the table, maybe you're only getting 25,000. You're like, hey, 25,000, that's fine. I do this 4 times, I hit my 100, right? And so I think some of those fears are they're definitely merited, but once you talk about money a little bit more openly and like where you can get partners, most people know someone that's in another industry that's highly successful. They're in medical or they own their own commercial business, and it's like they're doing, you may not know it, but they're probably doing something else with their money. They're just not telling you. Like, and it's like, hey, would you be open to like earning more money if it meant you could be completely passive and you're going to be, you know, when I like bring capital partners into my deals, I give them a personal guarantee of their return. So I usually will pay them anywhere from like 13 to 18% personal guarantee. And then we have a financial contract we sign with them, and then they get filed as a second or third lien behind the primary, which is your commercial bank, Bridgewater Bank, Platinum Bank, Star Bank.
So is that the pitch? So say, you know, my doctor's got 50 grand laying around and I want to pitch him that's the return he should expect.
Well, that's what I mean, if the market right now is what performing at stock market is pretty robust right now. So it's at what, can we say 12 is about an average? Maybe most people would say they're getting, and that's pretty high. You got to have been sent them above that. And so, you know, you got to have a couple percentage points of margin above it. I mean, one of our first deals that is our Medina project we have on here, Holy Name Lake, which was number 4. That one we raised like $300,000 of capital, and I guaranteed 20% return on that. And it's 2 parties we raised it with, and people still to this day are like, that's astronomical. You're giving 20% return. I'm like, what's 60 grand against 1,385? Like nothing. It was a means to make the machine run. It was, I would do it again in a millisecond.
But how did you get there to know that you were going to get those numbers?
Well, again, being hyper aware of like the market values in a certain area. Like I knew Medina was like just completely zero supply of lots for sale. You can even go look at it right now. Go try to find retail lots, acreage in Medina, Orono School District. Like literally there is next to nothing. Yeah. But especially open build, where you can bring your own builder. And so I'm like, oh, let's try to do this. So I originally was trying to do that project closed build. So I partnered with 2 builders, and we were in the throes of COVID was starting in 2020, and we had just closed in 2019 on our first Rolling Hills Road project. We made $244,000 in like 7 months, and that's the light bulb went ka-ching. I could either, let's see, my wife's still wanting to have all these kids, and she doesn't want me gone at night. Let's see, so I need to kind of find a way within this real estate realm. And so I'm like, well, I'm just going to do this. So I sourced out that property. It was on the MLS forever, for like a year and a half. And so Phil was going to do it with us, and he was pumping the brake because COVID was going on, and he's like, yeah, I think I don't want to do it. Well, the spreadsheet was built, like I'd already done the R&D with the city, and it was it was gonna be a tough one to get through, but he backed out and then I went, And honey, I said, well, we can either like try to bring some more capital money in right now and try to like water this thing down a little bit to hedge the risk, or we could just do it as a single investor and either use our own cash. I raised, again, 300 grand of capital, but Phil to this day is just like, I can't believe I backed out. I can't believe it. I'm like, hey, no, yeah, I would probably feel that way too, but you were working within the confines of your comfort zone. I totally get it. I kind of pushed the chips in and said, this is either going to hit or it's not going to hit. Fortunately, I mean, we as realtors back when COVID was hitting, were like thinking the market was just going to tank and we were going to be like, just dormant, dead in the water. Fortunately, it worked against us. So where I said earlier, where I get lucky, like I get lucky. And, but it's hedge luck, right? I mean, it's calculated luck. So the short answer is there's more business out there right now underneath your nose that's available to you than you would ever believe. It's just you aren't seeing it and you don't have enough education and understanding it to recognize it. And once you've talked to enough people and started to think of your brain a little bit more about either serving investors or serve myself as becoming an investor, you won't ever plug into that, right? And so it's kind of like if I go buy a white car, and it's a white Tahoe, I've got the whatever it is, the
Reticular activator.
Yeah, all of a sudden you start to recognize all of
Your
them.
LTZ.
Well, once you do that with like real estate investing and stuff like that, your brain just starts to like recognize all these opportunities, and other people aren't driving around saying, "My gosh, there's a lot of white Tahoe, new Tahoes out here." Like I'm seeing every one of them, whether I want to or not. That's kind of how it works. Now, like everything about this market right now just reinforces me. Like I cannot be reliant on other people's movement. I'm not going to be like a sneak old salesman and trying to coerce them to swallow a 7.25% rate. I'm not going to go try to tell them we can refinance later. I'm not comfortable with that. What I am comfortable with is like hedging my own risks and investments to like fill the void of the income I need to be able to do it. And I know that I'm controlling my destiny that way. And that's just what I'm going to continue to do. I mean, I literally will do this for the next 10 or 15 years. And if I don't, I can tell you for me, I will not go back to door knocking and cancel expires. I cut my teeth. I did that. I put in 14 solid years. The world was great to me. My clients were phenomenal to me. But I will not go back. It's kind of like going and being married and trying to like go date your ex-girlfriend that you broke up with. Like not
When
doing
you
it.
can make that.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean,
Doesn't make sense.
not doing it. So
Bam.
You don't own any rentals?
the thought of rentals and like traditional rentals like also makes me want to vomit. Just don't want to deal with it. My business plan, high level, is to continue to do what we're doing right now, to have every and any expense we have ever in our life paid off. So we're truly the definition of financial freedom. So, but financial freedom has to come with like an actual income coming out to get residual.
Mm-hmm.
So our residual plan is to build commercial or warehouse facility that, might be a $5,000, $8 million like investment eventually, and have like a class A 10 to 15 year lease with, an Amazon caliber client that's using it as a cold storage or whatever it is at the time. And when that time comes, I will not use my own expertise to find that and source that. I might on the land, but I'll like lean on like Cushman Wakefield or some big commercial brokers in the market to help me analyze the market, find my end tenant. But then I'll get my residual from that. It might be I'm getting $400,000 a year net from owning this property. And I may have to partner with somebody on part of it or not. I don't know, but that's my plan. I just don't want to have the traditional, like, oh, I've got 100 doors. Like, no.
But one big door.
I want one big door. Yeah. Or like, I could do storage facilities, maybe get into that. That's probably one of my favorite categories is getting into storage. A lot of the bigger pockets, if you watch it for like a year, you'll find that a lot of those investors go out and kind of dabble in a bunch of different categories. And then they kind of wind up funneling back to like storage facilities. They're like, they just are, they're managed, they're simple, they're sought, and they love them. They've got a really solid return. So we've got some options to get into some of those, but as of right now, all the money's just getting recycled back into land investment. So in our own deals.
Do you listen to any other podcasts? And do you listen to bigger podcasts? Real estate or just bigger pockets?
Well, Bigger Pockets is like the real estate podcast. So
Right.
there's an app.
I thought there were different ones. One is specifically to real estate.
No,
That's
like
fine.
the one I'm thinking I could share it with you is like, I've got the the podcast right on my my Hurth Radio app. You know, you can just go right into there and then search whatever your categories are. Like if you want to do flips or you want to do rentals or whatever, and you'll have just tons of them. And listen to someone doing it in some market somewhere else. And once you become a member and you build a profile in there and you start commenting on people's stuff, you kind of get some credibility with. And because a lot of the investor opportunity for you to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable using my own money yet, but I am comfortable trying to become a specialist for real estate investing. Well, you need to read the books, read the blue book, read the yellow book, read the other, you know, watch all the, you know, Million Dollar Real Estate Investor, the buy hold book, or the yellow hold book. Read those so you know how to use the right words and accurately speak the language. And then you'll go blow other people away because it's just a crazy underserved market. I mean, if I wanted to go back and grind and not do my own investments again, I would step back one level and just only represent investors, and I could stay busy for the rest of my life.
So we have 6 minutes left. So we've been doing these interviews now. I think this is the 30th one, about two and a half years. And, you know,
Funny, I'm 30.
Donavon brings these and yesterday I get an email from him with like all the answers to my questions already written out in advance. And I had no idea where this conversation was going today because we haven't talked since Mega Relief in 2017. So what's fun is, you know, we see things on the outside. I'm like, oh, #1 agent, Eden Prairie office. I know I'm a good dude, whatever. This would be a cool interview. And this was so much more.
Oh, thanks.
Than that.
Great.
And yeah, I mean, I just want to keep asking you questions. So what advice, I mean, again, I feel like I should share all the responses here just so people can see them, but you know, advice, you know, what have we not talked about that you want to? What questions do you guys have? Again, we have about 5 minutes.
You taught a class at Eden Prairie that was really great.
Yeah.
But do you do that monthly? Do you do that?
I don't do it regularly. I think one of the ones is maybe on this pivoting to self-reliance class. And then I did one, did a deal deep dive on one we're buying September 7th. It's like 137 acre rural property, 9 lots. That thing's is a projected profit in 6 months on that is 900,000. And so if you annualize that at $1.8 million over a 135 investment with about another 100 into it, the return on those numbers are just like absolutely astronomical. And so the point of that is to say, I want to empower you. It's all out there. This is an MLS listing. This is Eric Peterson's listing. So Eric Peterson out of Buffalo is the seller, and a buddy is buying it to develop it and split it. And so like it's all right out there. So like you really, when you're considering this, you have to like just put on your boxing gloves and like knock that drunk monkey like off your shoulder and just be like, no, like I'm not gonna list. Yeah, but he came from real estate, or yeah, but he's got like, forget the yeah buts, because that's just gonna serve whatever like narrative you want to do. But if you want to just make an extra 100, let's have lunch, and I will just at no cost, no expectation, nothing, talk to you and tell you, here's how you do it. Here's how I would do it right now if I was wanting to make 100. But for me, the return I'm getting from those other projects, they're below like the litmus test. They don't hit, they don't go green light for me because, you know, I just have one Billy Pauling in my office. I was going to buy one last year off market, couldn't get it done. And it came retail at a price less than I offered them in contract. And so I already had the concept plan made. I spent $1,000 to make it. And I brought it to a few of my investors, and people are just sitting on their hands. They don't think like the market's going to move as fast as it should. And Billy's going to do it, and he's going to make himself like, you know, $210,000 in a couple months once that thing gets split. Simple subdivide, 29 acres, 735 sale price, and no road, no improvements, just go through city planning and zoning. So, you know, if anything, I just want to empower people to say, hey, I respect your discipline and your drive, and, you know, be a believer and do all the things to think you can excel in this market, and you probably can if you put in the 200 to 300%. But if you want, and this isn't a magic pill either. I mean, there's still work and stress and things that come and responsibilities that come with kind of pivoting into representing investors or becoming doing your first investment. But to me, it's way more palatable than like all the unknowns of going out and having to rely on picking up the next listing in Highland Park or in Woodbury or wherever. I'm just like, I don't want to do that. But the best advice I would say is don't listen to your drunk monkey. Like like get challenged the swimming with the group down the river, because you'll find that there's a lot of nice little waterways that just come right off the stream that are, it's pleasant there and the water's not going down, and you can just drop the anchor and chill and do it a little bit different and have the same or better returns for way less energy.
So in 2019, what happened to force you to do this?
Well, I mean, again, my wife was wanting to have I thought my wife thought we were finished there for a little bit. I'm like, we're not finished. Like we're not Mormon. We don't have like big historical massive family. I'm like, no, like, okay, but you want to have this big family, but you want to have me home and available and running the kids around and being involved. And I wanted to be involved. And I can't keep doing what I've always done. And so once I kind of like tripped into my first investment with that Rolling Hills Road project, and we made 244 like in a point, and we retailed the lots, that just kind of made me go, okay, I need to exhaust this now. Now I'm really, really curious what I can do. And then once you become self-reliant, man, what a liberation you get, where you don't feel you've got to it's the next contract. I need somebody to commit. I'm competing with 3 people on the listing, or I need to wholesale my commission rate down. No, it's just, and now I just have way more time. And I mean, this is the most dressed up I've maybe been like all year. This isn't dressed up. I'm in jeans. Let's be serious. But I used to be I called it in costume all the time. Like my theory used to be like, I want to be the best dressed person when someone could call me, and if I'm at the office and they want to see something at 2:00 and it's noon, I have time to go change, right? And go show up looking like Joe Schlepp just rolled off the couch. Like I want to look well dressed. So I was in costume all the time. If you ever know Tom Hudak on my team, he's dressed every day like how I used to always be dressed. But then Matt Hunter in my office was a super chill dude. He's since passed away, but I always look like he just got done golfing. I'm like, dude, are you just golfing? Are you going golfing? And he just didn't care. He's like, oh, this is my mantra. I'm whatever. So most days you catch me, I'm in like shorts, some flip flops. I'm working from my home office, and I'm running kids around, picking them up. And if I've got to take an appointment to go show a lot or something in the afternoon, I'll put my costume on. I'll maybe go get that shower and everything, get it in the morning, and put it on. But my neighbors don't think I work thick, don't think I have a job. I'm like, well, I do. I'm just up in I'm above my office, above my garage up there in my hole, and I got a really conducive work environment set up where I'm not distracted, and I can knock more out and do more in 90 minutes than most people can do in a full day, because just my hyper focus. I mean, I just know where the money is.
Did your wife allow you then to take her foot off the brake to allow you to do more?
Oh
gas?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, now
That's
she's
the
like
part that
she's
I'm
just
wondering.
she's a whip cracker now. She's like just down there, just running double whips on me. Like, where's our next deal? Like, what are you working on? Get back up there in the office and go call a few like farms. Go call, because I've got a database of farmers that I mail. I stop in, and then I've created a program where like I can either buy.
So you do farm.
Yeah, just the land acquisition. Because I mean, I purchase most stuff retail, but last year at this time and 1 year back from then, at any given time, I'd have spreadsheets running that I was building out when I'm getting numbers back and stuff, like at 4 to 6 deals at a time, and most of them are retail. Right now, it's like maybe 1. So I just have to try to find, at any given time, I need to be actively like selling and building in development, and then actively in subdivision process of another one. So
Last question, how can we best help you?
I mean, if someone wants to be bird dogs, I put posts out on like Facebook and stuff like that. I need to do more with it, to lean on my network to say, does grandma or grandpa or someone have land or acreage out in the country, and grandpa just passed and the family's trying to figure out what to do. We love those kind of opportunities. So I guess that kind of stuff. Or, a lot of people sometimes feel like, I can take enough of what Donavon said to kind of start trying to look at stuff. So people will call me that have been in a class or listened online, and they'll be like, hey, I've got something that I think might work. Can you take a look at it and let me know your thoughts? And I'll just give a real cursory, like, yeah, hey, here's my thoughts. I think you need to call and find out this. Seems like it passes the litmus test on paper. You want to get a few more definite questions. And so I'll tell them who to call, what to do. And I don't expect anything back. Like I told Perry, I said, if today I can just empower one person here online that says, you know what, yeah, I am feeling exhausted, or I'm feeling beat down, or I feel like I'm failing in my traditional stuff, like, but I've got an appetite for this, or I know that I believe in myself and I know I can do this. If I can just make one person kind of decide to take some actual action steps to do it, even if it just means let's have a lunch or have a coffee, if the action step involves me. But I'm telling you, I'm not a unicorn. Like, I'm not a unicorn. There's a lot of people out there doing what I'm doing. It's just they're not telling you. Kind of like for like the rentals. You know, people are like, oh no, rentals, and I don't like the traditional rentals either. But you only think about the negative, right? Tell me how many like landlords out there own a ton of properties that are just living their best life, that are having, you know, they know that there's good and they're bad, but it's all worth it in the net of what they're actually getting. And you don't hear the good glory stories. You don't hear about like my tenants I just put in. I bought a property last year that I'm going to build my future like dream house on, and right by Lake Victoria in Smithtown Bay, in technically Victoria, but it's Shorewood, Excelsior. And people moved here from Switzerland, and they're like, please don't ever build on here. We'll stay here for 10 years. And they landscape the yard, they clip the tree. I mean, they are out improving my property. And I'm just like, here's a positive story about tenants that pay ahead of time and are paying over market and love it. And so just, you kind of let whatever you want in your way if you want to, but if you get rid of the noise and focus just in on the stuff you can control, you'd be surprised what you can do in just a slight little pivot in your business.
Love it. Let's give him a round of applause.
Happy to do it. Thanks, sir.